Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Super interesting topic today. A mistake that I see most players make when they are trying to produce lag and how they're doing it. So number one, are you doing something your body can do? Number two, are your concepts correct? So today we're gonna look at the concepts of how to lag the club, and we're gonna go through 3 common mistakes I see when players are trying to lag the club and how much it can hurt your game if you got this concept incorrect. And then number 3 is what drills help you get better. We're gonna finish the video with that. Looking forward to sharing this with you. Coming to you first with the number 1 mistake I see with players trying to lag the club. When we're looking at producing lag, so we got to think about, okay, why are we trying to do that? What is that going to help us with, right? So most players that I see, we sort of got 2 reasons. One is they think it's going to help them hit it further, produce like more speed, and number 2 is to help their contact, right? So if players are hitting it fat, you know, it might look like this. If they are losing energy, again, it might look like that. So the opposite of the club trailing them and then swinging in front of them. So number 1 reason I see from a common fault standpoint when players are trying to lag the club is when they get to the top, in the idea to produce lag, they're going to start to use their elbows, right? So they're actually letting their arms sort of collapse into their body, thinking that, okay, now the club is in a more loaded position, but now I've just used my arms to get into that spot, making me very narrow, okay? So usually what happens when I see that, so even if they're successful in producing a little more lag, it's very hard for them to square the face from this position because everything is so close, okay? So when they come in from that narrow, close position, so if I demo it, so if I come in and I'm this narrow and I try to swing through from there, you can see how that sort of shoots low into the right. That's just because as I come in, it's hard for me to get the club from this high down into impact and get the face squaring, okay? So it might even cause them to start to try to square it by throwing it more, so then they'll look and they say, oh shoot, it looks a bit more lagged here, but that impact, it still looks released. So one thing I would say when you're looking at, if this is your tendency, when you transition, instead of narrowing, try to imagine that your arms stay the same distance from your body as you start down. So maintaining your width, that actually is going to help you put the force into the club the right way. If I narrow my elbows, sometimes that actually makes me put the force this way, which is going to make me throw it a little bit earlier. So if I'm able to keep that width, I can keep a little bit more pressure into the grip and keep that width down. Everyone's going to have a different sensation for this, so it's important that as you do it, you know, you're getting some feedback ideally. If you want some feedback from me and from the Obsessed Golf Club, make sure you check the description below. It's important that you're really clear, because sometimes players say, okay, I did it, but we just have to refine, one, are you doing the visual? Is the visual right of what you're trying to do? And then how close are to you doing that same movement when you're trying to hit it, okay? So lots of times players think they're doing one thing, but with a bit more guidance, they can actually get all the way to the movement that we're trying to achieve, okay? So again, mistake number 1 is trying to use the elbows to leg it. We want to keep the hands away from the chest as we start down. That's going to put a little bit more force into the right part of the grip, and then from there we're going to be in a position where it's going to be so much easier. So if I can keep that width, it's going to be much easier for me to square the face. I was sort of the same intent of those 2 shots from that same position. One shoots low into the right, one goes pretty straight. That's just because I'm in conceptually the right position. If I start pulling my arms in trying to lag it, sometimes it makes it very hard to hit it solid and on line. So number 1 was the elbows getting narrow. Number 2 is trying to lag the club with excessive wrist motion, okay? So when I'm talking about excessive wrist motion, that is the wrist loading in a way that I am creating sort of too much of this like extension and cupping and sort of radial deviation as I start down, okay? So if you watch the club face, as I'm creating this angle, it sort of produces a couple different movements. One being, as I try to load it, that face is actually I'm creating a torque into this hand. You can see as I try to add this, it's sort of spinning my hand as I do it, okay? Because the hand, it sort of moves. There's actually 3 things that happen to the hand just by trying to load the wrist more, right? So that's creating more of this motion, which is radial deviation. It's creating more of this motion, which is wrist extension. And then it's also pronating my hand. So all of those things happen, which for a lot of players, when they try to do that, I'm going to see the face go from, even if the backswing's really good and they get here and then they try to do this, now again, the face is going to be in an open position. So I got sort of two options from this position. I can stop my body and then do this, which actually still looks like I'm throwing my angles away. Even if I, again, get sort of that leg position here, I might still look like this at impact because the face has gotten too open because of that motion. Or when I do it, I would say I keep sort of in that leg position here, and then I try to come through. And again, if I don't do something dramatic through impact, I'm going to see that ball go to the right. So it's sort of understanding why it's so important to not overdo something, especially from the wrist standpoint. So the key point for this, when we're looking at that transition move from a leg standpoint, wrist positions from the top, as I start to come down, okay, I want to just sort of maintain versus add a ton, okay? So when I maintain, that's going to help me get here. The face, I'm just trying to maintain that position as I start down, okay? So the club is going downwards. I'm not putting any crazy movement into the club. It's just going downwards. And then if I'm in that sort of down position and swinging from there, that helps me produce a straighter shot. Face is in a much better spot. And again, if I start getting this way too much, I'm going to have a tough time because I'm going to be too narrow coming into impact. I want a nice wide swing coming into impact. My hands are wide. The club might be lagged slightly, but my hands are wide enough where I have enough time to release that club, because that's going to be a big and important part of making sure you're getting a good impact position. So that's mistake number 2. Trying to create so much leg with just wrist motion. We want to keep the wrist a bit more calm in that transition move. That's going to help the face stay more square, and then that's actually going to help us square up the face at impact and still produce a nice solid hit without having to do a big motion with the hands through impact, which is hard to repeat. Okay, the third mistake I see with players is they do it by starting lower and move their upper body usually too far ahead of the ball. So it sort of looks like they're trying to create this club trailing, but they're doing it in a way that puts their upper body too far forward. So when my upper body gets too far forward, again, I have two options. One, I have to throw the club like this to catch up, or two, if I'm ahead of it and I stay ahead of it, that ball, so all three of these, we're going to see a similar tendency. So if I'm ahead of it here and I hit, you can see how low and to the right that's going to go. Your brain's not going to want that. So then what happens? You're going to react and then try to throw loft on it again, looking like you're releasing the club too much, okay? So the key for this one is when I'm coming down, one is as I transition, my lower body can produce a little bit pressure to my lead side, but my upper body is going to stay more behind the ball. That's going to let my arms continue to extend, and then the sort of the hand speed will be able to pick up, which is going to help the club follow my body, right? If I get too far forward, I have to slow my hands down to get the club onto the ball effectively. So if I'm able to stay more behind it as I transition, so on this one, so now my head is behind the ball, and then I'm able to swing from that position and let my arms continue to sort of accelerate to the right point and then release it, versus when I'm here, I have to slow my hands down to get the club to catch up. Okay, so that's number 3. So we have 3 different common mistakes. First common mistake, again, elbows bending too much. What are we going to do? We're going to maintain that width as I come down, pushing a little bit of force down into the hands, okay? That's going to keep the club trailing. Mistake, or common mistake I see number 2, is as I transition, trying to be overactive in the wrist. So sometimes that looks like a regrip and a big twist and a lot of extension in this lead hand, which is going to open the face too much, which makes it harder. And then common mistake number 3 is trying to use the upper body to load that club a little bit more, again making it hard to square the face, and then making you having to react, where we want to make sure when we transition pressure goes forward, but that upper body isn't going to get too far ahead of that golf ball in that transition. We're going to stay a little bit more centered. Okay, my favorite drill to help you improve the sequencing and improve how the club is trailing you. So I think lag might not be the right term, but it's going to be trailing you. You're going to be able to have more energy in the club and still deliver a square face, okay? So with this drill, it's very different than what you might conceptualize. As I'm going to start the transition, I'm going to start with my feet together, and then as I transition, what I want to do is imagine that I'm pushing my hands further from my body as I'm stepping forward, okay? So what am I doing when I do this? One is, when I'm pushing my hands away, I'm not able to narrow my elbows, so remember, mistake number one. Number two is, as I push away my hands, I'm not gonna overuse my wrists, and then as I step forward, I'm gonna get used to what it's like to sequence better, so my lower body beating my upper body, which is gonna help me swing my arms, which is gonna help the club stay behind my hands. Okay, so when I do this drill, I set up, so my normal setup, and then I'm taking my front foot and moving it towards my back foot, okay? So even if it gets about even with the ball, so as I'm swinging back now, I'm gonna be pushing my hands away as I'm stepping forward, trying to create that nice wide arc, but my pressure is still gonna be moving forward, okay? So it's gonna look sort of like this. So I'm set up, good setup position. Okay, front foot moves about to the ball, and then as I go back, I'm trying to create nice width as I'm stepping forward. Okay, so when I do that, it's going to help with my sequencing. It's going to help me produce the right movement with my hands in transition, and it's also going to help with the width of my swing. Three things that are going to, one, help you hit it more straight, and two, produce more energy because the sequencing is better, and then we're able to swing effectively through impact because the face isn't too open. I don't have to put the brakes on too soon. Use this one to help you get better. If you need any more help for your game, make sure you check the description below. Check out the Obsessed Golf Club, helping tons of players there, loving the process. Learn about your body, learn what concepts match you, and then what drills are going to help you get better. Have a great day, guys. Thanks so much for watching.